Hello, beautiful people. Today is a talk show day. Today we are talking about epigenetics, which some people have heard of it. It's definitely a buzzword going on out there. And then there's some people who have no clue what I'm talking about. But epigenetics for me was, Devin's just raising her hand. It's the Fertility Connection, and we have three of us today because we have some other lovely ladies, I'm sure, off getting a massage and treating themselves right. So, Devin, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Yes, hello. I am Devin Baeza, the fertility finance coach. I help women make, save, and manifest money for fertility treatments.
Thanks for joining us. And Sarah?
I'm Sarah Clark. I'm the founder of Fat Fertile and host of the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, and I help couples using the tools of functional lab testing make diet and lifestyle changes to get pregnant naturally.
Thanks for joining us. And I'm Monica Cox from My Mindful Me, and I help women with unexplained infertility and autoimmune issues reconnect their fertility links. Today, we are talking about epigenetics, which some people have heard of it. It's definitely a buzzword going on out there. And then there's some people who have no clue what I'm talking about. But epigenetics for me was, Devin's just raising her hand. Epigenetics for me, I read about it maybe late 2014, it must have been late 2014. And that was a game changer for me. I was already on my journey of health and wellness. I already knew the importance of all of it and how I can increase my fertility by doing diet and lifestyle changes. But when I stumbled upon epigenetics, I was like, oh, shit just got real. Like, this stuff is important. This stuff matters. Just kind of going in and doing nothing to improve your chances and kind of tricking your body into getting pregnant with IUIs or IVFs might have a big effect on your child later in life. And so the epigenetics for me is where I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to really making a difference to my future children's life. And especially my first son is IVF, and I was on immune suppressing drugs with him. So I was on steroids the first 3 months of his life, and I was doing the interlipids, and I was on Clexane. And I was super aware that this stuff isn't proven. So I was like, what can I do to help negate all these things that are helping me to get pregnant, but might not be healthy for my unborn child? I can recover from these drugs, but is it having an effect on, such a delicate time of their life? So that's what epigenetics to me is, and that's what's gotten me here today. That's what's driven me. Who wants to jump in on what their thoughts are about epigenetics? Go ahead, Devin.
I mean, I still don't know. Like, I need the most basic bitch definition you have. Like, if I opened up a dictionary, what is epigenetics? Like, what are we talking about?
It's basically where diet and lifestyle will either be disease will either be turned on or off by diet and lifestyle. So a lot of times we think we've got this genetic, our family history of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, MS, my mom, like whatever your mom had or your dad had, and we're like, oh my goodness, my genes suck, I'm going to get this. And then, but with diet and lifestyle changes and digging into other issues, that is not your destiny. So there's things you can do to change that. And even though those are your genes, that doesn't mean they're going to be turned on. And really for, infertility, I had Dr. Ben Lynch on the podcast talking about actually infertility being passed on to the next generation. So going through IVF, and this is like super scary. It's like, if you haven't, dealt with the issues you have, is that being then given to your daughter, or your son, which is like scary. It's like the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
In full.
It's like real life Handmaid's Tale. But I read that the other day at a study with PCOS. I hadn't heard that for other causes. Was he saying it depends on the cause of infertility, or he was saying infertility just in general?
He's just saying, yeah, some preliminary studies that he's seen is, and he wasn't even talking, this is like the first time he was talking about it publicly, that infertility is being seen in the next generation. And I've got a friend who coaches, who helps children with autism, and she sees a lot of people that come to her that actually these are children of IVF. So I don't know, like that's just like some some examples, I guess. But to me though, that's because a lot of times I think with our genes we feel like it's our destiny and there's nothing we can do. Oh my goodness, my mama has this, I've got it, and we just got to sit back and wait for death. But there's lots of things we can do with diet and lifestyle, which is really super empowering to know, we don't have to turn those genes on. And I first heard this with, I don't know, it was like Terry Walls because she has the Walls protocol with MS, and she was able to reverse her MS. It was a functional doc years ago, kind of in like 2014, 15, where I first heard about it, and talking about, this maybe it was rheumatoid arthritis that this woman had, and she, thought she was destined for it. And some of her other family members actually got it, but she made those foundational changes to her diet and lifestyle and was able to not get that, even though her genes would say different.
Yeah, I think it's a really hard thing to wrap your head around, because you're talking about like super scientific stuff, right? This is like even for me, I'm like, what? Like, say that again. Like, can I write that down? And because we don't see it, right? We don't necessarily feel our genes, or we can't grasp that in our head. So we just kind of push it away, right? Things that we don't get, or things that maybe seem really hard or confusing, we just push away. So we're like, no, we'll take the chances, because it's not like, it's not black and white. You have these genes, you can make these diet and lifestyle changes, and shit can still happen. So people are like, well, I'll just take my chances. And I think especially when we're dealing with infertility, like all we're focused on is that end goal, is having that baby, right? And I even had a friend, this is like so fucked up. I had a friend, this is before I got pregnant. This was New Year's of 2015. And we were talking about, I had my miscarriage and we're going to go back and do another frozen embryo transfer. And she said, well, it doesn't matter if your baby's sick, at least you have a baby. And I just was like, I didn't know what to say to her. I was like, no. Like, if I had a sick baby, I would do everything in my power to make that baby's life amazing. But would I want that? Would I, if I have these choices of, eating a certain way or living a certain way and maybe improving my child's chances of not being sick, no, like that doesn't make sense to me.
Because I think conventional medicine just tells us that there's nothing we can do, that we're powerless, that's they ask what your gene, like your maternal and your paternal history, and you're like, okay, that's what I'm going to get. But there's things we can do to change that. And I think with infertility, like again, like looking, not getting stuck on the diagnosis and looking for the root cause, and like why is it there to begin with, and what maybe the fact that you had a history of your mom had thyroid issues, and we see this all the time with dysregulated thyroid. Is there a thyroid issue going on? So those little pieces that have been missed, that we are just like on the diagnosis, and then we go to the clinic. So I think it's be able to look at this whole thing completely differently. To me, the book I love on this, and I keep it right here on my shelf, is Dirty Genes by Dr. Ben Lynch. And it's just like simple diet and lifestyle changes. And he's talking about 7 common genes and what you can do to really, talks about scrubbing the genes and cleaning them out. And really, it's the foundational stuff of the people already know. Like, we know we need to eat, we shouldn't eat processed foods. We shouldn't be going to the, eating junk food, but so it's eating organic foods. And obviously if there's a food sensitivity, you got to dig in that for yourself. Getting your sleep, your exercise, dealing with your stress, minimizing your environmental toxins, like those kind of things. I think we all kind of know about that. But if you have certain SNPs of these genes, then you could, predispose you to not being able to detoxify, or not being able to it just being predisposed to certain things. I know for me, like for instance, when I have caffeine, I feel like around the bend on caffeine. Like I feel like I could just so planny, I'm playing the world. Like it really impacts me. And other people are like, I have caffeine and I feel totally fine. So there's a SNP with talks about your ability to process caffeine. So that's just like a small instance, but we're all different. You can go down that whole, go to 23andMe or 23andMe and get your DNA test, and then you can run a report through Dr. Ben Lynch, and he'll do it's like a whole customized, so you can do a diet and lifestyle just for your genes.
That's what I wanted to ask, because that 23andMe is on sale right now.
Yeah.
And I was trying to decide which one to do, because like I'm pretty sure I'm just every kind of white, but maybe there's something exotic in there. And I really want to know about it. And then I was like, maybe I should do the health one. And I didn't know if it was legit or not. So I'm really happy to hear you say that.
Yeah, I did the 23andMe a couple years ago. Apparently I've got some Viking in there, and obviously in British because my dad's British, but yeah, it was cool. And it talked about actually, if you have a widow's peak on your hair, like what is the likelihood you'd have that, the color of your eyes, your hair color, all these, there's a whole list of like physical characteristics of kind of what you would look like. And then also your health that they talk about, if you would be like have the BRCA gene for breast cancer, or so some like kind of cool stuff in there. So you got the genetics piece, because there's the ancestry one. When I gave that to my mom because she wanted to know, all her ancestry. I did 23andMe for health. Actually, having Dr. Ben Lynch on the podcast, he talked about for the genes now, he actually recommends ancestry more over 23andMe to actually look at for health. That's what he's saying. Before that was opposite, but now he's saying that. But yeah, it's because these things are like, we've seen them all, the infomercials for this stuff, right? I think last year I gave my mother-in-law an ancestry kit, and she got another ancestry kit from one of my other from my sister-in-law. So like it's this stuff has gone mainstream with trying to figure out our genes, because it's freaking cool.
Yeah. And it's a quick way to figure out what you can and cannot eat, or how you need to live, right? Sometimes when you're just throwing darts into the air, you miss and you give up and you just say, well, it didn't fucking work for me.
Did you do one, Monica? Have you done that?
No, I haven't. I don't want to find out I'm adopted.
Those are the crazy stories,
right? Like that's all I see on the internet is like, oh yeah, I did this kid, guess I'm not related to my parents. I'm like, what? No, you know what, I just did all the long dirty work, right? Like I had 4 years of trying to figure all this shit out before the kits got cool, or there was relevant testing. I mean, maybe it was around, but I wasn't conscious of it because I was so focused on infertility. And I just kind of know what I can and cannot eat now, like down to like certain spices. And, so it's just, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm like Polish, and I must be a little bit Italian. I got dark skin. I don't know. But I don't know. It's not something that necessarily interests me that much. I would be interested if, I think Dr. Ben Lynch is coming out with one of his own tests, where the snippets.
He was working on it. Yeah, this like it was looking for, it might have already been released. Like when I interviewed him earlier in the year, like he was looking at I thought it was a fall or late Christmas or late fall release. But I guess with that caution, because you can go down the complete rabbit hole of like just managing the numbers and doing all this stuff with what your genes are telling you. And to me, before you, like if you're a numbers person and you like to see the data, that could be helpful. But there's really like the foundational steps of, like you're saying, like figuring out the diet, looking at getting honest about your sleep, you're honest about your stress. Those foundational pieces are equally as important if you go on into the minutia of your genes. So I think in this case, like we go to that last. We don't say everyone comes in and we're like, hey, everybody, let's do an ancestry kit and let's go into your genes. We go there last. We would just be like, wait, there's things you can do. You're not predestined to get your mom's Hashimoto's, or just because she had breast cancer doesn't mean you're getting it. So, if you've got estrogen dominance, let's help clear out the pathways so they're not going down the wrong pathway with, DNA damage. So and that's what we see in the Dutch test. So there's things you can do, which I think is empowering.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I think that it's empowering to know there's something to do, especially in a time where you feel so powerless and out of control, and especially with your body. And then I think there's the flip side of it, that as soon as you have a choice and you have the obvious right choice, then there's the wrong choice. And so then you have the guilt of the wrong choice, where before it was like, well, it's out of my control, it's not my fault, like there's nothing I can do. And so I think that's like half the battle, of acknowledging that it's true, that there's, this has been proven, this is in your control. Then now you have the weight of the responsibility.
100%. Yeah. I mean, once you, like we talk about taking the matrix pill, right? Once you take that pill and know and have that knowledge, it is like, even for me, like I'm not super strict with my kids of what they eat, but when they're eating something shitty, I'm just like, where me 10 years ago would have thought that was healthy, right? It is really hard to have that responsibility, but that's just where we live, right? Like we have already fucked ourselves up enough with all this processed shit that's come into our lives. And I mean, food alone is just hardcore for us. I mean, we're not even getting into the environmental toxins, the shit we put on our body, like all that stuff. It's so overwhelming. So when you learn about epigenetics and you think, how far do I go? Like, do I just become a fucking hippie and live in the dirt? Or, like, where's your balance? And I think that's what you have to do for yourself. Like, there's no point of burying your head in the sand, because if you do, and if you are unfortunate enough to, your own health starts deteriorating, or if you're dealing with a sick child, like anyone out there who has a child, let's even just say ranging from a nut allergy to like severe issues, it's fucking hard, right? Like it's all hard. Like I have a friend that is petrified of leaving her son because he has a nut allergy, and she has the iPhone watch and she can't go too far, and she's just always constantly worrying about this nut allergy. And that's got to be draining, right? That more draining than checking your own self before you get pregnant and during your pregnancy. I don't know.
To me, it's like, if we know this information now, and even if you don't want to do it for yourself, like to think about your children. So for both my kids had, my daughter had tubes in her ears. She had chronic ear infections. So both my kids, so she had tubes in her ears. She had her tonsils out and her adenoids out. My son had his adenoids and his tonsils out as well. His tonsils were so like enlarged and he had chronic strep throat. Like the amount of antibiotics that my children took at a young age is outrageous, because I was like, oh God, they've got strep throat, antibiotics, oh, ear infection, antibiotic, and then I changed their diet, and lo and behold, that stuff went away. But there's studies saying with children of IVF that predisposes them to food sensitivities, eczema, and allergy, like asthma. And my son has asthma. So and I didn't know any of that stuff in the beginning. And then, so my children's health, we lived in a fucking, like we were always in a hospital. We were always trying to be like with the medicine, is it going to be the hard way or the easy way? And we'd be like ramming freaking banana shit down their throats. And it is.
In my house, like every night at some point, it's brushing teeth or the allergy medicine. But what I thought, which is a bit interesting. So here's the thing though too, talking about guilt, and then the guilt you have during infertility about your body, and then it switches into mom guilt. It never actually goes away.
It doesn't go away.
So my oldest daughter is the one from IVF, and then the baby was the surprise of a lifetime. And the baby is the one who is allergic to cashews, pistachios, nuts, pears, eggs. Okay, so and has the ear infections all the time and all of this. She's the one who's like a wild animal. Also, she's the one I was talking about earlier. But
yes.
So my guilt was opposite, because I wasn't trying to get pregnant with her. It hadn't worked. It had been years. We gave up ever trying to have another child. I was like, maybe my own body didn't produce what it was supposed to without the help of IVF drugs. without the hormone supplements, maybe that's why I felt like I was dying the whole pregnancy. And that's why she, you know, has these issues. I remember, gosh, this is the next level of mom guilt. I had a client who literally was wondering, because she had the flu when she was pregnant, and she read an article saying that you were more likely to have a gay male child if you had temperatures above whatever while you were pregnant. So she thought she caused it. My mom was worried about the fact that my brother didn't breastfeed it for long enough and the effects this has had on his whole life. Like, that's the part that worries me when it comes to handing people the responsibility of every little thing they do throughout the day, is that the empowerment then switches into anxiety.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think when you go through this journey, you learn to balance, right? You know, you can't control everything. So you just do your best in what you know is, you know, better for yourself and for your child. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about, you know, any of that, but it's knowing, right? Like, I feel like, okay, so I have two sons, and my husband's family has prostate cancer. His grandfather had it, his father had it, his brother had it. My husband has it. It just hasn't popped up because he's not old enough yet. It's usually an old man's thing, but I'm guaranteed if you went and looked, he would probably have early signs of cancer already. So now I have the responsibility of, you know, guiding my two sons in the best health that I can possibly give them. Like I said, I'm not crazy with their diet, but I am very conscious that the decisions I'm making now in their youth is really important for, you know, when they become an adult and start making all the fucking wrong choices. Because I know, especially my second son, when he's out, he's going to be at Mackie D's all the fucking time. He just has this sweet tooth in him. He's not even had McDonald's. He doesn't even know what it is, but I know that he's going to be that kid. And it's just about doing the best you can and not beating yourself up. But then at the same time, like, I feel not giving yourself an excuse of like, oh, it's really hard. It's too hard to do this, you know, because at the end of the day, we live in a very convenient world. And even though shitty, cheap food's convenient, so is nutritionist food, you know, nutritional food. You know, you have those choices. And yes, the clean eating and the, you know, mindfulness, you know, meditation, yoga lifestyle is maybe less convenient. But I just did a post on Instagram, like, what's more inconvenient, having to do that shit or driving to a clinic for appointments? Like, that's probably why I got all my knowledge, is because I spent fucking hours and hours and hours driving to a clinic, and all I used to do was listen to podcasts during that time. You know, so why aren't we looking at the inconvenience of being sick and being infertile and not really like making that a big deal, but yet we'll sit and bitch about like, oh, I have to go spend 30 minutes to meal prep, you know, for the week. Or I have to, like, for me, I can't just go to the store and buy a can of tomato sauce. I have to make my own Nomato if I want bolognese or a lasagna or something like that. It's putting that into perspective, you know, of like what's going to be more inconvenient in your life.
Yeah, to me, it's like, yeah, doing the best you can, like for what you know, like just on that dirty bad food. Last night at 1:30 in the morning, we were woken up to a knock on the door, and my son had ordered Uber Eats, and Wimpy's was delivered to our door with burgers and onion rings, and he's gluten free. So, and yeah, he's like, oh, I went on there, but I abandoned the cart or something, but he's like, oh my God. Anyways, so 1:30, we got this. My husband's like, that goes right in the garbage because you can't eat any of that because, you know, but yeah, so there he is trying to keep a 15-year-old off of gluten, and because it makes him sick. So yeah, but it's I think once you know better, you do better, like that Maya Angelou quote. And and I don't think this is not to convince anybody. Like if we're trying to convince you, if you're like, no, I'm just not feeling it, that is fine. So you've got to really do what feels right for you. I'm assuming since you're here listening to this podcast, you're open-minded to, you know, looking at diet, lifestyle, and functional side of things. But you've really got to go in there and do what feels right for you. And like that cheap food is not good and good food is not cheap kind of thing. And yeah, as you say, with infertility, and you're spending all that time going to appointments and the drugs and how those impact you. And then, and then we're complaining about meal planning. I don't know. You just got to do it. Like if it doesn't, I just think if you don't think it's going to work, you are right. It won't work.
I think that's what it is. Like, it's not, I don't think people feel that they're making that decision. I don't think they believe there's a one-to-one correlation if they're not doing it. Like, they don't see this meal prep as saving them a doctor's visit in 20 years. Like it just doesn't. And it also is, your immediate gratification versus your long-term gain, which I see all the time when I'm dealing with my clients' finances, what they immediately want right now versus what their bigger goal is that's going to take a while. And do you have, what it takes, the stamina to do it? And what it boils down to is that a lot of times we just don't believe we can. And I love that Maya Angelou quote, but I don't know that it's true because like I know better. Okay. I know better. I am not doing better. I ate cotton candy and yogurt covered raisins last night in my bed hiding from my children for dessert. I know better. I just make the wrong decision every day because that one time I tried to give up sugar, it lasted like 4 hours.
Yeah, and I'm not over here some sort of perfect health person or whatever. I'm eating like chips in bed last night, but they were organic and gluten-free, but they're still chips.
Does it count?
They're still greasy chips. So yeah, like it's, I don't know. I think it's, I see what you're saying. Like we all, I think the foundational piece, we all know what we should do, but why aren't we doing it? And that is the friggin' $24,000 question of like, why aren't we doing it? And to dig into that, is it we don't really believe we can, we don't have time, we're too busy. What will people say if we start eating this way? Are they going to judge us? Like all this other shit that comes up that really has nothing to do with it. Because like food and that sort of and lifestyle stuff, there's like a lot of societal pressures on this, and it may be. Right now, society, when you get your infertility diagnosis, right now, the mainstream thing to do is to go straight to the clinic. Whereas with epigenetics, we're saying, wait, let's dig into this further and actually help to look at your health, the health of your children, your pregnancy. There's things we can do, but
I think the weight is the problem. When it's this weight, let's do this. The weight is where people fall off because there's just such an intense pressure to get it done now the fastest way possible with everything you have available. And to hear anybody say this might take more than a month, even though the doctors know that, and they're not, they're still convincing you like next month it's going to work, this one IUI, this one could be it. Like you keep thinking next month is the month. And if you look back and it's been 6 months, could you have changed your diet in 6 months? Could you have found a exercise you like in 6 months? Changed your makeup and your lotion in 6 months? Of course you could have. That time's going to pass anyways. What are you doing during that time is important, but you just keep hoping that you're not going to need it.
Yeah. And you're right, you're just on the short game. You're not that long game. You're not looking at your future. You're not looking at anything beyond your next time you can test for a pregnancy. But I like back to your thing, what you said, Sarah, about why you're not doing those changes if you know better and you're still not doing those. And it's, I had to dig deep within me about this. Is like, why can't you stop drinking a fucking glass of wine? Why are you so emotionally attached to a glass of wine when you know that this is having an effect on your overall health? And especially for me, it was my gut health. So even having one glass of wine is going to be, set my healing progress back. And it was like, why don't I love myself? It's like, fuck, man, we gotta go there. Like,
no.
That's like,
yeah, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. Yeah, all that stuff. It's, to me, it's, there's a lot of it is this like a mindset game, right? Where like there's the judgment that I'm not worthy. I don't have to, I'm putting everyone else first. I'm a people pleaser, like whatever shit story that's come from your family that you've absorbed, that all the stuff that we have, right? The stories we're telling ourselves, that to me is more the issue as to why we're not doing it. Because
yeah, and it's that self-sabotage, right? Those like we do it to ourselves all the time. We're like, oh, I deserve this, I had a long day, or like I'm rough, it's my treat. And I like say to people, like, if it is not serving your highest purpose of whatever's happening right now, so right now during infertility, your highest purpose is to get pregnant, right? And, you know, if you're taking a holistic way of doing that, your highest purpose is to get healthy. So you doing those little things, even if it's, you know, for me, like once a week, having a glass of wine, is it going to affect my overall, like, getting pregnant? No, it's not. But it's just like, why can't I stop that right now? Me trying to get pregnant is going to be such a short time. Well, fucking 9 years wasn't really short, but for most people, it's going to be a very short time in their lives. And why can't we love ourselves enough to do that on a consistent basis and do those loving things for ourselves? Because for most of us, it's not every once in a while. The self-destruction is happening on a daily basis in some kind of form or whatever.
Yeah, the self-sabotage, a little guy on your shoulder is talking crap to you, and you, like, before you start something 2 weeks into when you've started something, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so easy. Then, oh my God, it's just a disaster. And then halfway through, you're like, I got this. This is so easy. I am just doing the diet and lifestyle. And then something happens and you're like completely off the rails. So it's like to know that's completely normal, that it's like this little roller coaster where he kind of tricks you. You're like, I got it. And then then you fall off and you get slammed in the face. But it's to not, like, we're all going to slip up, and it's not about perfection. It's like each day, again, coming back and going, okay, well, I'm doing this. Why? Like, what's my intention? What's my why around this? And like, if starting with a diet doesn't feel right, it's like starting with a mindset and really doing things that, like, that self-care and boundaries and stuff that really makes you feel good, and then can allow you to do some of the other, foundational changes.
Yeah, and it's interesting the overlap in areas too, because when you start doing better in one area, you usually start doing better in other areas. Yeah. So it's interesting how, especially what I see with finances, and good decisions with health and working through your family, origin issues, and there's all, your marriage issues and all of these things that are tied together. And I think some of it's confidence. When you start seeing yourself succeed at something, you believe in yourself a little bit more. And then it's becoming the person you want to be, and you're not going to make changes until you are sick to death of where you're at. If you can't stand it, not for one more minute of one more day, like, there's a whole wheel of change and the reasons we change. And when we actually change is because we want it for ourselves and we can't stand it, not because somebody else told us, but because it's, it's so important into who we are becoming and what we want in our lives. And infertility is a perfect time to make those changes, because everything in your life is in upheaval anyways. Like, let's just be honest, right now sucks. This year is probably going to suck. Like, it's already a shitty year. You might as well just go all in and, go to the gym when you don't want to and drink the smoothie and see what sticks.
Larry, calm down. This year doesn't suck yet.
No.
Oh yeah, we're doing January. I was like, wait a minute, 2020 is already sucking? Oh crap.
No. You know what I mean? If you're like, this is like, I've done 3 IVFs this year. You know what I mean? Like, and talk it up to, this is a rough time. You might as well do some things that are going to empower you forever and change your life forever. Now is the time, because it's all being brought to light what needs to change in your life.
And do you think, if you knew about epigenetics, and like we talked about being a mama bear, and Devin, you said this a few episodes ago about you have that instinct already, right? So if you knew that you had this power to mold your children's health to the best of your ability, why don't we use that instinct to do better for ourselves? If we're not ready to do better for ourselves, why aren't we using let's do better for our children? Because surely every parent should be achieving that, right? Like, maybe you wouldn't do something for yourself, but fuck, you would do it for your kid.
I think it's because it's intangible, because the baby is still a hope and a possibility, and it's not real yet. My carb craving is very real right now. The potential pregnancy in 3 months is not. Like, it really comes down to the moment. And then I think to acknowledging it. So I think that a lot of times, especially if you've been doing treatments for a while, in the beginning, you always imagine yourself pregnant. Like every month I was convinced, like, oh, my boobs hurt, my pants are tight, I'm pregnant, I have to pee a lot. No, like every month, month after month. And then eventually you start protecting yourself and you just won't let yourself mentally go there.
Yeah.
I didn't even want people talking about me being a mother, because I'm like, you don't know that that's going to happen, and it hurts to hear it. And I might never be a mother. F you, you don't know. And so I just couldn't even mentally go there. And so preparing for my future children as if they were a reality, I'm not sure I would have been able to do that.
Yeah, it's funny because that's where I switched. So when I started to use the word when I get pregnant instead of if I get pregnant, that's like, and this was all subconscious. Like I didn't have anyone really, maybe I did, but I wasn't doing it going, woohoo, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what's going to get me pregnant. But I started to change and unblock myself. I put the guards down because I had, like you, built them up so fucking high. And not that I think, I think there is a power in that, but it wasn't the be all and end all, right? I had to change my diet. For me, I had to change my diet to get pregnant. But being able to say those things and putting the walls down just started to give me the confidence and started to love myself more, and then was able to like break those bad habits, of the carb eating, the wine never really fucking went away, but at times it did. But yeah, it's setting yourself up and doing those little steps. And I think one of the biggest things for most of us is breaking down those walls again and allowing ourselves to love ourselves and love our bodies, and start subconsciously convincing ourselves that we can do this. Because if you're telling your subconscious that you can't do it, it's going to fucking find ways not to do it.
Yeah, and that patience piece where you're just like, everything's, and this is my pattern my whole life, like everything's pushing and going, I'm in a friggin' hurry, and with obviously with pregnancy each month, and so it's being able to, like, we call it a journey, and there's a beginning, middle, and end, and maybe you're stuck in the messy middle, and to know there's things you can do. But if you don't feel strong enough right now to do some of the things that we're talking about with epigenetics, and maybe it's just like, wait a minute, I'm just going to dig into like self-care, or like recognize the fact that I'm talking absolute shit to myself, whatever thing is going on in your head, and reach out for support. Because when I was going through this, it was like some random little freaking forum in the middle of nowhere that I was on, and basically it was, there was no hope. Now, the hope thing can be, that's a whole other slippery slope, but like you don't need to go through this alone, and there's just to see where you are. And if you've just been diagnosed, maybe you're ready to make some of these changes from epigenetics. But if you've gone through multiple failed IVFs, and month after month after month, and like you're saying, can't even visualize it happening, and don't even talk to me, and I feel so, I'm guarding my heart, because if I let it open, I'm gonna freaking crumble to a million pieces, and we're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna go dairy free and gluten free. No, fuck you. So it would be like that point where like we need to really like sit in this a little bit, and potentially is it therapy or coaching at that stage.
Well, and it sounds like from what you guys have been saying about it, that it's multifaceted. There's different areas, like you said. There's that seven, right, that Dr. Lynch talks about. And I'm wondering if maybe if being informed is your first step, and then maybe picking one that feels the most attainable. Because I know we do this with finances. I call it competing priorities, where people are like, I got to save for retirement, and I got to save for vacation, and I'm saving for a baby. And it's like, you can't do all that, because if you see no progress in any area, you will quit all of it. So you pick the one thing, put everything you have into that, because those small wins is what builds momentum. So maybe like you can't commit to all of the changes, but maybe pick one that seems doable and go all in, and then, reevaluate.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what we do on the course is, I give you some options, and it's just like, just pick a few. Like find what is best for you, because, I think sometimes we get coached in that we have to do it all, or, we have to sit on a pillow and meditate for 20 minutes, and that's the only way you're going to get there. And the thing is, you have to find what works for you and just commit as much as you can and do it over and over and over again until it's a habit, and then add something else in, and then add something else in. And it's, a little by little, a little becomes a lot. And all of a sudden, I look back at me and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, yeah, no wonder it took you fucking 4 years to do all this stuff. And now I'm like, why don't you just do it? And it's like, no, like, calm down. Like, we all get there in our own time. But it is, for me, I was like, you get to that desperation stage, don't you? Like, think of all the fucking crazy shit we did in the name of getting pregnant. And now all we're talking about is, eating clean and, taking steps back from like this crazy ass society that makes you feel like you have to do everything plus 20 other things, like, I feel like sometimes this like holistic thing is like put like, oh, we're so crazy, but it's really just stepping back and, becoming back to what our ancestors were, just, living a very simple life and not overdoing it.
Yeah, because that's what makes you happy. All this stuff and comparing and more and doing and all this stuff, that's a path to unhappiness. Like, the happiness is where you're pulling back and look, it's taken me a while, and I'm still I'm not there, but I'm way better than I used to, where I basically was trying to ignore all my feelings by shopping nonstop every day. So I'm not doing that anymore, although there was some online Black Friday issues, but that was for Christmas. But yeah, so it is to kind of know some of your patterns, and it'll come up like really hard during times of stress. And yeah, I coach my clients too, just take two little things, and it might be just like, oh, today we're going to take the phone out of the bedroom, because are you going down a comparison like thing of looking at other people's social media feeds and feeling just horrible because you're seeing someone else announce that their baby's being born. So yeah, a lot of this is like self-care and self-awareness too.
And I think it will benefit you when you do have children, and it's going to benefit your child, putting in these practices, are going to, like for me, I always say I'm a way better mom than I would have ever been because of my changes. And I can see it now in my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old, we've taught him to, breathe and like think about his actions and why he's freaking out like a normal 4-year-old would. And, like, I'm just grateful of putting in that time, it's hard mental work. And I can't even imagine doing it when you have other things going in on your life, like children. So I think infertility, like you said, Devin, is just a really good time to start putting in these practices. And epigenetics is just another good why to put into your arsenal of when you find it super hard and difficult doing these things. Even, going through an IUI or an IVF, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the holistic side of things. I think any part of this journey, you can, get back into your whys and push through with what, you want to accomplish. So I think that is us done for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
See ya.
A few more things before you go. If you're loving what you're hearing here on the Fertility Connect talk show, please leave us a rating or review. Let us know what you're loving, or hey, even a topic that you would like to hear on the talk show. If you would like to connect with any of us here on the Fertility Connection Talk Show, our links are down in the show notes, making it super easy for you to find any of us. We're honestly, truly here to help and support, so please feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you once again for joining us, and have a beautiful week.